Who would have thought stricter emissions regulations, especially in Europe, would end up harming the automobile industry, making cars more expensive, making cars in a lot of ways less desirable? Check this out. The EU just cleared final hurdle for them to retract their obnoxious CO2 emissions targets. Guys, if you're new to the channel, my name is Kirk. I talk about car news every single day. If you like car news, make sure you are subscribed. We're not going to finish with this. We're going to start with this, but we have other news to talk about today. Make sure to stay afterwards. Mitsubishi price hikes? Are you kidding me? Audi thinks tariffs are going to be more manageable in the near future. Nissan's just saying, hey, you need to retire because we can't afford to pay you. And then we're also, at the very end, going to talk about the Genesis hybrid and how it's going to compete against the Lexus hybrids in the luxury segment. Like I said, if you're new here, my name's Kirk. Make sure you're subscribed. I'll have some huge Toyota news in the coming days. That's all I can say. Massive Toyota news, some fun Toyota news coming in just a couple days from now. So you don't want to miss that. Make sure you are subscribed, hit the bell icon. And in just a few weeks, I will be going to a massive Toyota event, new reveals, new hands-on impressions, new driving impressions of all sorts of products. So it's going to be Toyota madness. And in just a few weeks from now. So like I said, subscribe. And if you guys like this, hit the like button while you're at it. EU clears final hurdle for softer car CO2 emissions. European automakers are going to have longer to comply with the EU CO2 emission targets for cars and vans and could reduce potential fines after the European Parliament gave its backing on Thursday to soften the rules. Why do they need to back off? Well, $17 billion, guys. Because of these sky-high hurdles that are not realistic, it would have cost the European manufacturers 17 billion US dollars or 15 billion euros because the goals rely on selling more electric vehicles, a segment where they lag behind the Chinese and US rivals. I would say they lag behind probably Tesla. That's about it. But Chinese rivals, absolutely. The thing is, it's like you have to protect your own auto industry, Europe. And if you're saying, hey, well, let's go to fully battery electric, despite them having really no supply chain for batteries in Europe compared to China and other, let alone like rare earths compared to China. Like China has won the EV game because of the materials that they have, the parts that they have, the supply chain they've built up over the years. And so Europe's like, yeah, well, we can't compete with the Chinese on product or price. And if we keep these emissions regulations, well, our own automakers aren't going to have a shot against the more competitive Chinese EV options that are available in Europe. All right. So they have to reduce CO2 emissions to preserve their own industry. I mean, I saw this coming from years ago. These governments can force EVs all they want, but at some point, reality happens. How much is this going to be a detriment to the automakers, these billion-dollar companies that support the economies in Europe? How much is it going to be a detriment to the people who are paying for these EVs, which are more expensive? Once you remove all of the rebates and tax credits and all those incentives, which many of these European countries have done in the past couple of years, EVs are not price competitive. All right. Energy is not cheap in Europe either. So it's not like you're going to get away from, cheap fueling. I know there's nothing cheap about fueling in Europe because I know petrol prices are expensive. And it's just sad because diesel used to reign supreme there. And diesel's highly, highly efficient. And I know you guys have been saying diesel's less clean. I get that, but people need cars for transportation. They need that to get to work, to support the families, to support the economy. And if they can't afford cars anymore, I know public transportation is better over there. It's going to be a huge, and it has been a huge detriment to the European automakers. We've seen Volkswagen and Audi especially laying off tens of thousands of people, potentially closing plants, which they've never done before in the history of the company in Europe. It is just madness going on over there because of the European government pushing EVs and absurdly high emissions controls. So the European Commission has proposed automakers to meet the targets based on the average emissions over the period of 25 to 2027 rather than just this year. Okay, so they haven't completely thrown it out the window, but don't be surprised this gets extended even further. Because look at how much the European lawmakers are voting for this EU emissions drop. All right. Reality has finally hit them upside the head. They're seeing it for what it is. They're seeing the huge liability that it's become for the economy and for jobs over there, these emission standards. So guys, it's over 4-1. EU lawmakers have voted to overturning, or should I say postponing, these EV deadlines, or should I say emissions deadlines, which really just means more EVs. Ursula von der Leyen, the EU Commission president, has said the change would give European automakers breathing space. Not much. Volkswagen said last week the longer compliance period would still result in a burden in 2025. Absolutely a massive burden. Now, on the other end, critics say that the auto industry has had 7 years to prepare for 2025 targets and that the 15 billion euro estimates are vastly inflated. Well, here's the thing. You can't just materialize in 7 years an EV supply chain. The core minerals have to be there first, and even then, depending on red tape and legislation, it may take 10, 15, 20 years to start mining lithium, let alone other minerals. All right, so 7 years is a joke when it comes to supply chain, especially when you're shifting from a gasoline-focused supply chain to a much more resource-dependent supply chain, which is EVs, or should I say batteries in general. Guys, it's a mess over there in Europe, and it just looks like they're saying, hey, well, we're just going to postpone it. But even then, Volkswagen is saying we're still going to get hammered in 2025 with these really aggressive emissions regulations. Mitsubishi weighing price hikes in response to tariffs. This could be absolutely, this would just wipe Mitsubishi out of America like that. They import all of their cars into the United States from Japan, and they only sell about 100,000 models per year, not nearly enough to make their dealership volume profitable. Mitsubishi Motors offers 6 models in the US, including Outlander and Outlander Sport, but the Mirage is gone, so that's one less. They have 0 hybrids outside of the Outlander plug-in hybrid, and really the Outlander plug-in hybrid and the Outlander really the only vehicles I would recommend even looking at in the Mitsubishi lineup. They have no pickup trucks, they have no sports cars anymore. They're just a snooze brand, unfortunately, which is sad because obviously as a kid of the 90s, Mitsubishi is one of the coolest car brands out there. They're just a shadow, not even a shadow of them for themselves. They're not even remotely close to the same company offering the same products, not even close. The company suspended imports on finished vehicles to American ports and froze shipments to dealerships in response to the tariffs. It has about 100 days inventory in the US. The scale and timing of the price hikes will be based on inventory levels and on moves by competitors. I mean, what are Mitsubishi's? Who's cross-shopping Mitsubishi? All right, think about that. Automakers expect the U.S. tariff policy to raise costs by $344 million for the fiscal year ending in March 2026, and plans to offset 20 billion yen of this with price increases. So 2/5 of this with price increases and such cost cuts as reduced sales incentives. Okay, so you raise prices, you reduce sales incentives, and your brand is already not competitive in the United States. Your dealers have been bleeding out for years. All right. Mitsubishi Motors also expects $10 billion less in sales outside the U.S. on tariff-driven global drop in consumption. The company sees operating profit taking a 40 billion yen hit from the tariffs this fiscal year, forecasting operating profit overall to drop 28% on the year to 100 billion yen. Ford raised prices on the Maverick, the Bronco Sport, the Mach-E, but this is really blown out of proportion. It was really mainly a mid-year price increase, which all the manufacturers do. It wasn't like that significant, like $500-600, something like that. So this is just getting blown out of proportion in the news. Nissan will hold prices steady through June 2nd, their sister company. And then they don't mention in here, but what Mitsubishi 100% needs to do in the near term is ask Nissan to build cars for them in the United States. Now, the near term, how would that work? Well, they would simply have to rebadge a Rogue or an Altima or a Frontier. Strictly rebadge with no other besides like Mitsubishi badges, there'd be no changes to the vehicle. All right, in the near term, so that they could start producing as soon as possible. Now, it might take Mitsubishi a while to supply this new volume increase for Mitsubishi, but Mitsubishi absolutely needs it. But the thing is, it's like, are these vehicles that Mitsubishi would be essentially contracting from Nissan to be built in Smyrna, Tennessee, and Camp, Mississippi? Those models aren't competitive really anyways, besides the Frontier. The Rogue's not competitive. The Altima's not competitive. What else? Well, Mitsubishi they are 100% going to rebadge the new Leaf, which I believe is going to be built in Smyrna, Tennessee, where the current Leaf is built. But guys, EVs, no one's really that interested in EVs, or should I say, it's not going to save the brand. Not even close to rebadge a Nissan Leaf. So what else can Mitsubishi do? Not much. A Hail Mary would be working with Foxconn, but again, that's an EV only, and that would be contract manufacturing out of somewhere around Ohio. I think that's where Foxconn is. They might have a place in Wisconsin too. I can't get it straight with Foxconn. Mitsubishi is already working with Foxconn for Southeast Asia vehicles, but there's no official announcement in the United States. So really, how I see this is Mitsubishi is screwed unless tariffs change for Japan. All right. Mazda is probably screwed as well because Mazda imports about 80% of their vehicles into the United States, most of it from Japan, but they also have a plant in Mexico. So it's not looking good, guys. I'm really worried about Mitsubishi. I mean, these tariffs could be like a dagger in the company. That's just, I mean, it just accelerated probably the inevitable. However, Mitsubishi does have exciting products coming down the hatch, like the Delica and things like that. But if those are all made in Japan, doesn't matter, right? So Mitsubishi is the company that is probably the absolutely most screwed. I have no better word for it because of the current situation, having no domestic production in the United States. We need to keep moving. Audi, though. Audi, while I'm like waving the flag for Mitsubishi, throwing in the towel, Audi's saying, hey, there's going to be more bearable tariff regulation in the coming months, right? We just saw the UK get a 10% tariff instead of a 27.5% tariff. That's just for 100,000 vehicles. That's just like a drop in the ocean compared to the 16 million vehicles that are sold in the United States on a yearly basis. Audi has no production in the United States. They make a ton in Mexico. Their best-selling vehicle, the Q5, is made in Mexico. All right. They also bring in, of course, a lot from Europe. All right. Audi's saying current trade talks between Brussels, meaning the European Union, and Washington, the United States, to provide some level of clarity over a car import tariff situation soon. European automakers facing a 25% import tariff in the United States, the world's second largest car market, causing many of them to pull their outlooks for 2025 and look to Brussels to hammer out a bilateral deal. BMW earlier this week was more optimistic about a trade deal, expecting U.S. car import tariffs to fall from July. Okay, so things could happen very, very fast. We know British Prime Minister Starmer and Trump, they worked out a deal to make this a little bit easier on Great Britain and U.S. benefits in their own ways, but I'm not going to get into it. We'd be here all day. Nissan eyes early retirement to cut several hundred jobs in Japan. Not that many. Okay, not that many. I thought it was going to be more. This early retirement would be the first attempt by the Japanese automaker to shed workers through early retirement in 18 years. The jobs targeted for elimination are all administrative positions. All right. Isn't it crazy what's going on in the world, right? Trimming of governments, local governments, federal government, at least in the United States, a trimming and reduction in costs of these big companies as well. Everything is getting trimmed for more efficiency, better productivity, more profitability. The trimmings are happening, all right, due to necessity. And everyone's just kind of gotten a little obese around the world, at least on the administrative end. All right. So I think this is going to be some good trimmings for Nissan, but it's hard to say. I mean, Nissan needs to essentially like a reboot on all of their leadership roles. And they do. They have Espinosa in there that could really right the ship. But we'll see. Anyways, lastly, Genesis GV80 Hybrid. Korean car blog came up with some estimations here. Now, I don't think these estimations are going to be that accurate. And the reason is they're expecting the engine to not be running in the most efficient, fuel efficient combustion cycle. I think that's what the right word is. All right. So they're expecting about the same horsepower here as what we have now. All right. Instead of the reduced and more efficient combustion cycle. All right. So they are expecting 362 horsepower. It's possible. So I made a spreadsheet comparing it to Toyota's performance hybrid that we see on the RX and TX. It's also on the Crown Sedan and Grand Highlander, this Hybrid Max. If Hyundai has a less efficient but more powerful combustion cycle here with this hybrid, which I doubt they will, we could see 362 horsepower. But more than likely, in my opinion, and you would see more than 339 pound-feet of torque. It would be, let's just say 360 pound-feet torque. I'm not 100%. It might be more than that. But guys, there's some unknowns about this powertrain. The only thing we have to base this off of is the front-wheel drive hybrid that's coming in the Palisade very soon. This is going to be a rear-wheel drive implementation, so we don't know if it's going to use the same transmission or not. We don't know if it's going to have available all-wheel drive. We just know that it's rear-wheel drive biased, okay, or rear-wheel drive at its heart. And if it's going to be a hybrid, it's probably not going to run at this more powerful combustion cycle. So more than likely, guys, I'm expecting this setup here just in a rear-wheel drive application, and more than likely a 6-speed automatic instead of an 8-speed, but time will tell. All right. So at best, it will go toe-to-toe, and I guess this would be GV80. At best, it'll go toe-to-toe with Toyota's Hybrid Max, but with being at rear-wheel drive, it'd be more fun to drive. And we don't know about efficiency, okay? So I just have 30 miles per gallon. It should be able to beat Toyota's Hybrid Max in efficiency and be slightly behind it in terms of performance, at least raw paper performance. Who knows, with it being rear-wheel drive only, it could have better acceleration because Toyota's hybrids are pretty damn heavy with the big E-axle in the back. Now, they will eventually replace this E-axle here with something that's more compact and more efficient, yet providing equal, if not better, outputs, but I don't know when that'll be. So I'm going to end it there. I'm excited for Genesis to come out with some performance hybrids to give Toyota and Lexus, specifically Lexus, a run for their money. And yeah, the EU, I don't know. I don't know what the near-term or long-term future of the EU is going to be. This EV utopia that they've been trying to build up, it's nowhere close to the reality of where they, like the time frame that they were expecting. All right. So let me know if I have any European viewers in the channel. I know I do. What are your thoughts on them lessening emissions targets? Is this just step one? Are they going to keep pushing back these goalposts? I don't know. Time will tell. Thank you, guys. Have a great day, and I'll catch you in the next one. Like I said, make sure you are subscribed for the big Toyota news drop coming in the next couple days. Peace out.